You'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I should have called the meeting to order, but we jumped right to the pledge. So uh, in absence of that, this meeting of the Town of Mills River Planning Board for November 12th, call it to order. And we move to approval of the agenda. Yes, sir.
Just quick note, I did want to note that we have the new agenda format for you tonight. We did check with the town attorney and she was fine with us implementing this without any conflict with the charter. So just wanted to mention that. before we
Great.
approve it.
Well, thank you. Yes, it is a little different. So, all right. That being said, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? And thank you, Mr. Cole.
Second.
And thank you, Mr. Foster. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now to the approval of the minutes for the October 1st meeting. I trust everyone's had a chance to look at that. If you have any additions, comments, etc., if not, we would entertain a motion. Thank you, sir. All right. Thank you, Mr. Oliver. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now, staff update.
Thank you. Got a few updates tonight, since it's been a minute since we've been together. I mentioned this at the council meeting, but wanted to let everyone know that the townhomes on Jeffers Road have begun vertical construction. So there may be, some more impacts there since they're framing and putting up the structures. Just ask that if there are any complaints or issues, to direct those to planning staff. We have a direct line of communication with the developer. We had a question last week and we were able to get an answer by the end of the day. So any issues there, just contact us. That's what we're here for. Quick reminder for the board, we have the volunteer dinner for our advisory board members this coming Wednesday, November 20th, 6 to 8 p.m. at High Vista. Another thing I wanted to mention is that with Mr. Moore being a council person elect, we're going to have a vacancy on the Board of Adjustment. I know we have two alternates right now on this planning board that also serve as alternates for Board of Adjustment, but just wanted to put it out there that if anyone else had the time available or was interested in serving either as an alternate or as a full member of the Board of Adjustment, to put an application in on file or just talk to staff. That's one of our harder boards to fill, so the town clerk just asked that I mention that tonight. Some of the state roads that were previously closed in the town due to Tropical Storm Helene are now open. So Brickyard Road had a washout around the bridge, and there was also a washout on the west side of Old Fanning Bridge Road, the bridge over the French Broad. Those are both temporarily repaired with gravel. So just be careful driving through those areas. But right now, to our knowledge, there are no state roads that are closed due to damage in Mills River. Wanted to announce again to the public that council placed a 1-year moratorium on the prohibition of using RVs and campers as single-family residences, again, to assist with temporary housing needs and options after the storm. So again, for anyone in the public, anyone interested in having temporary housing on their property, just contact planning staff and we'll help you through that process. Lastly, related to Tropical Storm Helene, Henderson County is collecting information on private roads that are damaged, which again in Mills River there's quite a lot of those since we don't maintain many streets. But the more information they receive, they're collecting that input through their website right now. The more information they receive regarding private road damage, there's a possibility there could be more funding from FEMA that could be directed to the county in the future, but they need that accurate picture. So I'm just putting it out there that, again, if anyone's listening online and you did experience private road damage, please go to hendersoncounty.nc.gov, click on the Hurricane Helene update, and I think about the 4th item down, it says private road damage assessment form.
Sure.
So if you did experience that, please submit it because it just helps with the county's case to get funding for those items. There is no guarantee your road will be repaired or that funding will go to your road, but again, having the complete picture helps. And that's all I have.
Very good. Thank you. So the next item is board comments and updates. Is there anything? Yes, sir. Oh. Mr. Foster? Yeah. Thank you. Um, I'm humbled and honored the people that place their trust and support in me, and I'll do my very best for the town and for everyone in Mills River, and it's Mills River first. And I look forward to being able to sing the praises and the desires and wishes of Mills River in front of anyone who will stop long enough to listen to me. One thing I do want to bring up, or I don't know if this is the right place to mention this, with a recent project we had that had a whole lot of units on a big piece of property. I don't know if this is the place to talk about it, but perhaps we ought to take a look at our density, overall density, and see if that's something we want to keep. I'm just not sure that the 4 units per acre was really, it really contemplated a really big piece of property. And if that's something that the planning board in the future would like to discuss, then, just think about that, because that seemed to be one of our, as a board, biggest concerns was the number of units on that property. And it does meet the town's units for, 4 units per acre. So I think if that's something in the future y'all would like to take up, then I think that we would be glad to have that discussion being had.
Jeff, if we're still on board
Yes.
comments, I don't want to move on without
Please do.
taking a second. That is definitely on our list of things, density and higher density, medium, whatever you want to call it. But I think all of us are also participating in the UDO, which we're addressing as well. So there's going to be multiple opportunities to discuss that. Can I ask you a question? Maybe you said this, is there a December planning board meeting? There is, and is that the second? What date do you
Fifth?
have on that?
No,
I
no,
believe it's the third.
third.
Tuesday.
The third?
Third.
Okay, just a lot of scheduling issues in that month, so I'm sorry, I know
Yeah.
everyone needs,
Yeah, I won't be able to.
there we go,
attend.
so make sure we're
And
looking
do
ahead
we
of
have
that.
items for that meeting that we know of?
Not at this time that I'm aware of.
So if you won't be here, it would be my last meeting.
I believe you're sat on the 11th, is that when the new council's sat?
The 12th.
The
The
12th,
12th,
okay, so
yes.
I'm off everything by a day here.
And me too, I've been off 2
So
days.
the 12th, so you would be at that
We've
meeting,
got a Board of Adjustments meeting on the
10th.
10th.
and that does have a
That
special
I've
use
got to
permit
be
for
there,
us, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless, so it's not something that council would hear. Well, we don't need to talk
No,
about that.
No,
Because-
I know, I think every year we go through this
Yeah.
December schedule, so I appreciate you taking a minute to go through it with us.
Sure.
Because there's gonna be a lot of conflicts in there. And
And
if I
if it-
step
if-
on Tammy's Christmas party, this is all off.
Huh.
So,
So if it turns out that we don't have anything, then would it be appropriate to cancel it for December? And
I think that's the pleasure of the chairman. Right?
so,
We can let you know. There's a
Yeah.
few major
Okay.
subdivisions out there that have been in the review process, but
Sure.
are not all the way there yet to bringing them to the planning board. So
okay, so my next question is a major subdivision. We have a permit for the Fulham Farm to be subdivided, correct? Do we have a number of units on their initial subdivision?
220 lots.
220. How many do we have in Jeffress? 90,
That's about 140
140? Okay.
townhomes.
Okay, and do you have a rough, and I asked this, I hit Michael last minute with this question, so is it okay if there's no answer here? Do you have a rough number on units in the rest of the township that are open
So
permits?
if you're just looking at subdivisions, Fulham is 220. Silver Pines, which is a major subdivision that's been applied for in the southern part of town across from Brickyard Road,
Uh-huh,
is 16 or 17. And then Mills River Crossing Phase 4, which has been out there for quite a while,
right.
is 19. So that's
Right.
about 255 total. in
That's,
3 major subdivisions.
okay, thank you. I'm making notes on that. So that,
Okay.
and that's not for today to talk. I need to prepare for future meetings. Is that phase 4 to the west of the south Mills River Crossing?
It's to the west of the northern side of the
To
highway.
the west of the northern side. So it's just on the far side of 280. Okay,
Correct.
perfect. 19 units.
Mhm.
I don't know if this is planning board or board of adjustment. I'm sorry. What happened to our sidewalk conversation with them?
When they come before this board for the major subdivision approval, they have a walking trail that's being proposed to
Okay.
meet the
In
requirement.
lieu of, okay,
The ordinance says sidewalk or walking trail.
Oh,
and
okay.
Because the ordinance is what it is, there's no standards for a walking trail.
interesting.
And so that is the way they're meeting the pedestrian.
That could
facility.
leach down into the green space, or is it?
It's on a adjacent parcel.
Right,
But again,
right.
that's for the planning board to review
Okay.
when we bring the major subdivision forward. And again, that was just what staff worked out with them.
Okay.
And again, it will be up to the planning board to determine if that's
So
sufficient.
I just want them to hear, because we can't possibly know all of these ordinances, and there's some things we need to come into these meetings prepared for. So the sidewalk conversation, the financial feasibility it's outrageous to redo what they've done. There's almost no way to put that burden on them at this point, because of the pitch of their driveways alone would kill that subdivision. So that's why I was asking. So the trail is interesting to me.
And on that note, does the town have the ability to charge a fee in lieu of?
Since there's no ordinance
Since there's no
requiring that
ordinance.
currently, no.
So that's something the
We've talked
planning
about that
board
at the
might
staff level.
want
and
to,
It'd be something to look at for the UDO.
is that fee, okay for UDO?
Okay,
So
and I apologize. That is something
That's
you and
good.
I spoke about last Monday. That didn't make
Is-
my long notes.
Is
here.
that, is everybody on the board, do you know what a fee in lieu of is? We as a town would establish, I'm gonna say it anyway, for I guess anyone's listening in. We would establish a fee,
You get paid to
per
shut up and look
foot.
away.
of sidewalk. So if it's say $100 a foot and you need, 500 feet of sidewalk, that's a lot of money. So it may be less than that. In Asheville, for what it's worth, when I left in 2018, it was about $100 a foot for the most part to put in a 5-foot sidewalk. But the fee wasn't quite that much. But that's where then that money would be used for sidewalks somewhere else in the town. It's only, if I understand the law correctly, it's only for a residential project. You can't demand fee in lieu of for a commercial project. They would have to just put in the sidewalk.
I can't tell you the firm that did this UDO, although I've only recently met him in person. I've had past workings with their UDO in the town of Laurel Park. The same firm formed theirs. So in my line of work, it's very extensive. There's a lot of these questions we ask, there's
Mhm.
already answers in the UDO.
In the UDO.
Michael and
so that's
Kevin
a
must
great
lose
thing.
their minds wanting to find the answer and it not being there. Do you have a minor subdivision and individual permit guess of open permits for residences?
No.
Okay.
And
Last
for the townhomes, it's actually 148 units. I was eight-
148?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
eight off.
Thank you. And the one other question I asked you was, and you may not know, again, I hit Michael with this, late today. What's the current number of existing residents in the town
We
limits?
don't have that
We
number.
don't have that. Okay. So for the board, what I'm looking for is information. I want to know what our average occupancy per residence is. And for lack of better math in the future, when we're hit with these minors or majors or whatever the reason it's coming to us, we need to be able to have a multiplier there. 2 people, 3.5, how many people live in each one of these units? And you come to me asking for 300 units, I'm going to do some quick math and realize that's a 15% population increase in our town. And I may have some different questions now that I see that the population's going up that much. That's a less than average number, by the way. And the last thing I have, Michael, this may not be the place, please shut me down. I've already spoken to 2 members sitting up here that were unaware of the FEMA lease next door. And I think as a planning board, we're getting asked about that. Would you mind hitting 10 seconds on that, or do you want to stay out of that?
All of those questions should be deferred to the town manager.
Okay.
But I can just say, and I wasn't at the council meeting, so I don't want to.
We were, well,
The council approved
Yeah.
a lease agreement for a storm debris waste management site on the town's property next door.
so just, Billy, you were there, right? Yeah, so we had a couple of questions. It was it was kind of came out of nowhere and it moved fast, the short rate. And a couple of us have been asked as planning board members, what's going on there? Well, that wasn't through us. So it's a 9-month lease. They're going to try to wood chip, mulch a bunch of it. There's going to be
Uh-huh.
2 piles, one for residences without 1-ton trucks and dump trailers, right, Billy? Is that-
Yeah, and that's
Right.
small.
yeah,
That's
and then the FEMA people, and there's a $300 per acre lease on it with a 6-month renewable at the end of it. I know that was a lot of blah. Ask me, ask the town manager. I think it was a great thing for the community, but I've already heard some people upset about it. Just defer 'em to the town manager.
and it was 9 months, right?
Initially, and then
Yeah,
after was the
it
renewal was 6 month, but termination went either way. We can terminate or they can terminate
And they
with 60 days notice.
We're supposed to leave it the way it was when. they-
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want to answer some of the questions, that was one of the big ones. They have to leave it in as good or better condition, and that'll be based on soil samples before and after.
Yeah.
And to Shannon's point, it's been a farm for decades. And
There's no doubt.
soil's not good right now.
And the DOT is working on the same types of leases in other places in the county. And they're looking for a,
We have one on 191 right here,
yeah,
just
a
outside of town
minimum
limits.
of 10 acres. And it's a place where the state trucks, if you go by the one on 191, you see the elevated platform. There's inspectors up there ensuring what's being hauled in, and that's taken in ground, and then the
It's
mulch.
very organized. Liability policies are in place. The
Very.
attorneys reviewed everything. I just wanted you guys, just because for some reason, a couple of us have been asked. I think it's fair for us to have some information. It moved fast though. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. All right then. Anyone else? Okay. Now if we have some public comment, do we have any emails or anything? And I'm assuming y'all are here as applicants tonight. Feel free, if you got some comment you want to make before that, feel free. Unrelated. All right then. We'll move on to old business. We have none. So new business, R2404, request for rezoning 315 Banner Farm Road, Selwyn Property Group. All right, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Malachek.
Evening, board members. So we got a rezoning application early October for this property at 315 Banner Farm Road. And again, conventional rezoning request, and the request is from neighborhood commercial to light industrial. It's about 2 acres and a single family home there. Again, this is at the northeastern corner of Banner Farm Road and Schoolhouse Road intersection. The applicants, normally with a rezoning, we're just looking at the zoning map and the comp plan and the future land use map. But because there's an existing project we've been working with the applicant on for the adjacent property, they submitted some site plans and additional information basically to show why they're seeking this rezoning. So again, currently, the plans we've been reviewing would be a 170,000 square foot warehouse facility on the 12-acre existing parcel. But if they're able to acquire that corner property and get it rezoned to light industrial, they can then recombine those parcels. And again, the proposal under this rezoning would be developed 2 120,000 square foot warehouse distribution buildings on one larger site occupying that whole corner. Again, with rezonings, we like to, it's advisable to pay attention to the land uses. Again, if you have questions for the applicants, and I'll invite them up after I finish my staff report, feel free to ask them. But again, this is not conditional zoning, so we shouldn't get into the nitty gritty of where parking is going to be and additional, zoning ordinance requirements. So again, looking at the zoning districts
I
now.
have a question.
Yes.
Is this something that I will hear on council? Is this something that there would be a conflict if I hear it all tonight? Or if I hear it tonight, will I recuse? They're both public meetings. I would be hearing it twice.
There's no issue with that because it's
Good.
not quasi judicial, it's
Yeah.
legislative, and you have no, to my knowledge, no financial impact from this decision.
None at all.
Yeah, so I think you're.
Just want to make sure that we're all good.
So again, the property is currently zoned neighborhood commercial. So the intent of that zoning district is to have some light commercial uses that can coexist in a residential area. Retail businesses and services in enclosed building, single family dwellings, etc. Light industrial, obviously higher intense zoning district, usually manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, etc. So again, looking at this rezoning, we looked at the future land use map. And if you look there, oh, I skipped up this part, sorry. If you look at the parcels adjacent to it, this is not spot zoning because the existing property and some of the adjacent parcels are already zoned light industrial. So if you look to the north, south, and east, those are all light industrial properties adjacent to the subject property. To the west side across Banner Farm Road, there are a couple parcels zoned neighborhood commercial. So we don't really have to worry about spot zoning with this one because we're not rezoning a parcel different from those around it. Now, when we look, going back to the future land use map and comp plan, when we look at those, I think we came across this inconsistency in the plan, the description for the community center district. We came across this with the Brandy Branch rezoning request. So both those parcels and this one specifically are in the community center future land use district. And in that district, it states that industrial uses, it calls for a mix of uses including commercial, residential, industrial, and agricultural. That's in the community center future land use district description. But if you go to the next page where it's broken out in a chart, there's a conflict that says industrial is listed as a not desirable use for this district. Staff is staying consistent with our interpretation last time, is that the community center district description says promoting a mix of uses and includes residential. So we're staying consistent, going with that interpretation again, and basically saying that we find this to be consistent with the comp plan and future land use map, because our interpretation is community centers to promote those mix of uses, including light industrial. Because of that, and because consistency with the comp plan, staff is recommending approval of this rezoning request. You've got the draft statement of consistency in your packet. And then I'm happy to go through the specific attachments. We've got the application as attachment A, the applicant letter, attachment B, your property map and land survey is attachment C. I didn't mention that they don't own the property yet, the applicants, but they have signed an agreement and purchase for sale with the current property owner that gives them permission to pursue this rezoning. That's attachment D. We have the current and proposed site plans for the property as attachment E. You have your zoning district uses, light industrial and neighborhood commercial as attachment F and G. And then the zoning map analysis. Your current zoning map is attachment H, showing the property. The proposed zoning map, if this were to be approved with the change, is attachment I. We have the future land use vision map showing it's in the community center district as attachment J. And then we've got the land use, future land use descriptions in the chart as attachment K and L, which is where there's that inconsistency between the chart and the future land use district description. And then we have draft statements of consistency for the board's consideration for attachment M and N. So I'm happy to take any questions, or if y'all want, the applicants are here to speak as well. This is only the second time, but we would need to do yes.
Well, I would argue with the third, with the Brown development, my statement of consistency was the conflict. That's gonna be one of my questions, but the question is gonna be.
It's a comp plan amendment. So basically we treat it like a text amendment, but it's to the comp plan and the future land use map. So if the planning board desired to do that, we could, provide direction to staff to initiate that.
Is that going to be looked at in the UDO? I don't want to distract from this, but I know there's going to be conflict in the UDO with it if we don't change it.
There's going to be less of a focus on the comprehensive plan and future land use map. So I don't think it would hurt to make that.
Then I would ask that we consider bringing it up again in future business, but not spend any more of their time on it.
Right.
But my question is along the same line of thinking. I was going to say this is Brandy Branch, Brown Road development. We had conflicts. One was a conditional zoning. One, Councilman Young pushed back and said, go make this a conditional request instead of a rezoning. Are we still staying out of that conversation with the applicant? Like, why didn't we do this conditional instead of rezoning or,
You asking me that question?
yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Michael,
well,
for you.
I'll give the same answer as last time. We
Okay.
presented both options to the applicant and they
Okay.
chose to go with the conventional rezoning,
Okay.
to try that option first.
Okay. So
And-
are we at the point where we can ask some questions about the maps? Or have you got a direction you want to start higher up?
I was just gonna say that in this case, because the surrounding land is light industrial, that's why this makes sense versus
Conditional?
We
conditional,
can put that on the map.
because it's adjacent to light industrial.
C,
It's
is that what
not
I'm
like-
looking at? Kevin, is that what your attachment C, is that what I'm getting my zoning off of? Because that's where my question's coming from. Thank you.
Mhm.
Perfect. So directly across is the veterinarian clinic, right?
Yeah.
The two parcels to the south, I'm sorry, the second and the third to the south are the mechanic and the car shop and what else? Or is that both him?
It's Shade Tree Garage and I think a single family home.
Yeah,
So the next one over is a single family home. Billy, are you picturing that?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
okay. I'm just going for what's the nearest
yeah.
residences. And then to the west, that is an attorney's office, I believe. Or is that the residence, the next green one
That's an
So-
attorney
So-
office behind the,
across from the
Veteran-
main entrance of the
vet-
school?
veterinarian's
That
office.
light-
I just think part of the conversation is how near are current residences and just part of it.
This was Mr. Whiteside's
Yeah.
property, wasn't it, from a long time ago
Right there?
there?
Oh, no, that is the house over there then,
So we've got
to the west.
Shade Tree
Yeah,
there,
okay.
and we've got that building, the single family home that's across from the school.
Not trying to steer anybody on anything here. I just want to make sure we're looking at the right
This
picture.
property is not occupied now, right?
I believe Kirby has tenants in there, or he did.
Does it?
I don't know that that matters too
I
much, but
think he
Kirby's
did.
rented it for quite a while.
Yeah.
The chickens aren't running out in the middle of the road anymore.
No,
Okay. So knowing that we can't ask questions or that we shouldn't make a decision based on the exact use, we have that
Right.
here. Are we in the watershed?
Yes, it's watershed 4.
Four.
That means with stormwater controls, you can cover up to 70% of the property with impervious
So
surface.
next question was percentage. So let me find that question because I need to fill in my blanks here.
And this
The
is gonna be-
percentage, so it's 70 with the, and that's in the southeast corner, if I saw the plans correctly, the drive.
That's where they've
recovery.
reserved area for a stormwater device.
And this will be recombined or combined with the other parcel.
That's the
Okay.
cleanest way to do it, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But,
Mhm.
but the, one of the benefits is, if I'm not mistaken, is this property, I'm sorry, light industrial is subject to setbacks,
Mhm.
right? So that changes, that little 2 acres has a far greater impact because of that. Those setbacks of adjacent property lines. Is a bigger, so the total impervious surface is 70, not including the recovery pond?
Correct. 'Cause
Okay.
the recovery, yeah, the storm.
I'm sorry, the storm management, the dry
That's-
pond, the
yeah,
whatever we're
that would-
calling it.
That would be considered, yeah, not.
I'm
really
sorry.
pot.
Yeah, okay. So at 14. So we're gonna have right at what, 9.8 acres that could be impervious. I'll ask questions. I'm just doing homework right now. I'll ask one of your questions there, Chair. I don't know if you're all this far along, but I assume I know the previous one, or I believe the previous plan, project, is that far enough to have a TIA or to have a traffic impact?
We've
Have
done-
you got a traffic impact versus
We've done one.
under both?
We've done one for the development that's currently being.
The
completed.
170
Yep.
usage, but I'm assuming we have different docks. And, with 2 120s over 170.
I'd have
and
to
our-
look at the TIA.
If
code, but
anything, it could-
there is a prohibition that we can't require a new full TIA within
At-
3 years on the same parcel. So we would probably do updating of numbers.
yeah,
I'll
it would,
defer
it
to-
it would be an amendment or an addendum, just
Again,
based on
not
the
steering
new-
anybody, just trying to get the whole picture here. So the traffic impact analysis is done. We're good. Or otherwise, so they can't do a completely new one. in 3 years?
That's in our ordinance.
Even if there's a deed of recombination done and the parcel changes identity?
Really, once you update the modeling for
Okay.
the new use, it's a.
The use based on whatever the submitted to
technical
the
part of
two
it
at
is going to be
120.
redone,
Okay,
the technical part, and that would be in the amendment.
okay.
So, yeah, it's 60% as much work as the TIA, but you're not having to rewrite all the stuff. You're just changing the level of
I
service
mean, some
table.
quick, don't hold me to the calculator
Yeah.
here, but that's just, it's about a 30% increase in usable warehouse. That just seems like a significant traffic impact to me.
Well,
Or
it depends on,
potentially.
yeah, it depends on the warehouse.
I don't know what their flow
Yeah.
is within their pair, but I know they're likely adding docks here. When you add docks, it's to accommodate traffic.
Yeah, it'd be truck traffic.
I'm
And,
just surprised we can't do a new impact analysis on a 30%
but
increase in
it's going to be,
inside
it's
space.
going to be analyzed.
Okay,
Because when you do the amended TIA, you have to take the new density and put that back into your models, and
okay.
it'll spit out the new levels of service, and then
Okay.
you may have different mitigation.
So look, and that's foreign to me, so I appreciate you entertaining the
Sure, I'm
question.
glad. No,
The applicant's already providing mitigation for the currently proposed development, but again,
Okay.
no one's seen that because that's a staff level
Okay.
review.
Mhm.
So again, if this were to go through and if that other 2 acres were to be recombined and developed, new numbers would come through and we'd take a look at it again, but we can't force them to do a full TIA.
Okay,
again.
okay.
But
that's
you don't
fair.
need to as
But
long
the
as
diligence is being, the due diligence is
Yeah, we're
being,
gonna look at the
yeah, no,
impacts
so,
of what the development would be if the whole, both these parcels are used.
Mhm.
and can you answer this? I'm assuming somewhere in is this all off of Banner Farm or is it Schoolhouse or is it changed with the 2 120s? The entrance and
I think
exits, or
there are different accesses proposed.
they move,
between
but are
both
there a
of them.
different number and are they on different roads?
We don't know that because they've not moved forward with this development
Okay.
plan.
So what
They
is the
need to-
entrance egress on the 12 acres?
I'm just gonna caution not to get too much into the details. of the
You're right.
site
I'm
plan,
sorry. You're right.
Because we need to,
Thank you.
that this board needs to consider, you can look at the site plan and ask questions, but this board
Right.
needs to consider all light industrial uses for this rezoning.
Okay.
So right now, I think the applicant's proposing warehousing distribution, forgive me. But again, they're proposing a conventional rezoning to light industrial. Those uses are in your packet. So I would advise we look at the compatibility of that.
Okay.
Jason property is already flat.
Correct.
Still there, whether they hit the 2 acres or not.
Correct.
Right.
That is that 191. At the intersection.
To Banner Farm.
Banner Farm.
Well, it's a traffic problem.
Yeah, so as part of the Haywood Road widening project with DOT, eventually there will actually be a signal there and additional lanes. But again, when we were reviewing the original proposal for the 170,000 square foot warehouse, the build out of that project was going to occur before DOT had completed their work. So one of the mitigation staff worked out with the applicant was adding another turn lane to mitigate traffic impacts just for their project
And that would be a turn lane
On Banner
Banner
Farm Road,
Farm.
right?
on Banner Farm Road. So there would be an additional right turn lane. So a right and left turn lane on Banner Farm if you're going north, and there would be a cross-hatched area to allow the semi trucks to more safely make that turn without blocking traffic. That was one of the things we worked out through the TIA for the project currently under review.
But a signal, it didn't warrant a signal from
No.
the TIA. There's not that much more of an
And
impact.
DOT was gonna be putting that in
It's
a
coming in
couple of years
anyway.
down anyway.
Yeah. And on a side note, we'll be begging DOT to go ahead and get that in as soon as possible.
Would the traffic study account for school traffic as well? like they, when they do those analysis,
Mhm.
it does account for like the
Yeah, there-
times of days when there's like car lines and things there.
I believe it's in our ordinance that school traffic has to be taken into account, and I believe there's like a multiplier, or they do specific counts during that time of day, so that was looked at.
It's also a little bit different peak hour factor. So what it does is it reflects the fact that school traffic has a narrower curve, and that's usually in the morning because the peak for the afternoon is going to be later than school traffic. It's between 4 and 6 p.m. So when the school traffic is the worst, the background traffic is not that bad. At least that's the peak hour occurs after school traffic in the afternoon. So the morning school traffic will definitely be shown in the traffic study. Afternoon, not so much. Is that reasonable? Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Is
Well,
that-
yeah, I'm just thinking about how, currently the car line traffic
Mhm.
would extend out onto Schoolhouse Road
yeah.
during, again, maybe it's only an hour, but during that hour, if there are trucks, kind of additional trucks also trying to navigate through that
Yeah.
area.
That's a tough.
I just wonder if that's, because this is literally across the street from a school. It would be, north.
So they back up both because of the four-way stop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
west and then north on
And
Banner
then there's,
Farm.
when the school's actually, so there's like in advance of school dismissal, then there's when school is being dismissed and the line is moving again, in which case there's also like the bus traffic and whatnot. But I'm thinking specifically about when cars are like accumulating in the hour before dismissal.
Looked at the TIA, I think it was 100% of truck traffic coming down there. So both, and again, this is the site plan we've already been reviewing.
Right.
The truck park is gonna be accessed just for Banner Farm. So again, that could change, but based on what we've reviewed already, there'd be fewer conflicts there.
Michael, I don't know if this is fair to ask you. And first of all, let me preface this by try to keep my questions from crossing that line, and it's almost impossible not to. So thanks for putting me back on that last question. This list of what's allowed, can you pull out 2 or 3 examples of what is allowed? Here it is, F, under light industrial, that's not in neighborhood commercial, because there's long lists for both. Is there something significant we should be, maybe not even significant, but what's an example of something that's on the light industrial list that's not on the neighborhood commercial? It's just,
Yeah.
Manufacturing,
okay.
The number 12 on,
machine and welding shops. I mean, any of those industrial nature businesses are not going to be permitted in neighborhood commercial, because again, neighborhood commercial only allows services within an enclosed building to mitigate impacts, because it's, again, commercial that can coexist with a residential neighborhood.
So the things that have potential for noise and smell.
and traffic, like trucking terminals.
I mean, I don't know how long this inventory is sitting at a warehouse, so I don't know what the traffic's gonna be. I don't know how long they're holding something. It could be less or more traffic in general, but we need to stay away from that part of it. Not what they're doing, what someone else could do.
Yeah. the
I know
traffic's-
it's just, a little bit insulting to remind us all, but I'm just guilty of it myself doing it a minute ago. The conversation has to be about what could be allowed, because let's just say our applicant has a better option the day after we rezone this. And then this hits the market for sale. It hits the market as light industrial. Now we're exposed to everything. Which is one of the reasons I keep going back to this conditional zoning, because then we could be having a specific conversation and we could take the applicant without any concerns. So I think a big part of, so I asked that first question to ask this question, neighborhood commercial in the future land use map. You say there's a conflict there, but the noise and these potential for smell, is that also, something that is discouraged in neighborhood commercial in the future land use map?
I mean, it's not discouraged, those just aren't permitted uses.
Right, so the conflict there, I'm wondering why, I wonder if it's not just an accident that we keep seeing this, but if somebody said while they were forming this, I don't want to hear manufacturing and smell manufacturing. Let's, let's discourage industrial. I wonder if it was just a conflict of message as opposed to a typo.
Let's look at the map here in front
Yeah,
of
and I'm
us.
sorry, I
Look
keep
at all the-
toggling back and forth because
Yeah,
that's what I'm
look
doing.
at all of the light industrial out there
Mm.
surrounding this property.
The purple,
Yeah, look
whatever
at
we're
all that
calling that.
purple. And so this is just filling in a gap in the purple.
This is
Well,
not
but-
an industrial park, but it's an industrial corridor based on zoning.
Why were those green parcels carved out in the first place?
No, I don't know if they were carved out or if that's how the original zoning map was done or if something was rezoned.
Meaning that the light industrial may have come subsequent.
That's possible,
Is there a way to find out?
not immediately.
Where are you going with it though, Lisa? Play a hypothetical here.
Well, I think it's curious, it's curious to look at this map and see sort of the puzzle pieces of the green with the purple and then the green's back inside. And what's the yellow?
It's MR
30.
If I could interrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The two parcels in purple that are south of Schoolhouse Road were rezoned to light industrial.
The 32 acres to the right of Bold Rock
Yes,
and Bold Rock also. at one
I
point.
think Bold Rock as well.
And so they would have been rezoned at a time when conditional zoning wouldn't
Didn't
have been. an
This was
option.
done later,
Right.
specifically the southeast section that Arlie just mentioned.
Right, meaning we didn't have, conditional zoning wasn't an option then. The only
right.
option to accommodate
Right.
the zoning request at that time was to rezone it light industrial, which then meant it's light industrial forever. And then begins to justify additional light industrial zoning all around it.
If you pull that down, there's even more purple up closer to, yeah, up in there, see the light industrial there.
Yeah, I'm not arguing the the contiguousness of it.
Mhm.
No matter what the future uses are, I mean, no matter what other uses can happen, that's the right word today, but no matter what other future uses may happen on that property, adding 2 acres to that's not gonna change that much at all.
Now, the big difference for me is the setbacks change the developability by quite a bit.
And again, assuming that they're going to build warehouses as it is, if that's the case, which again,
We
once we
can't
vote, we
assume.
can't change that, I get that, but at least there are more entrances, separate entrances for trucks versus, I assume that's employee parking, and so forth, but I mean, that, and I wish you could go back, but you can't, but where it stands right now, that doesn't really negatively impact, whatever they use it for, different than the other properties around them, so.
And the traffic question is answered by the traffic
Yeah.
study.
Sure.
Because it's got to be mitigated. So, and it is.
Any questions for the applicant, just since
Sure.
we've been talking and they haven't had a chance to come up?
If you'd like to address this, we'd be happy. If you'd like, if you got comments, questions or
You don't have to.
answers.
You
for
don't
us.
have to.
If not, yeah,
Just a minute, I want first off, we appreciate the opportunity to.
Sir,
This
thank
will be
you.
our first project in Mills River. And we have owned the other land for a couple of years now. And it was, and it's taken us longer. We thought we would probably be under construction by now. But this actually kind of is a blessing in disguise a little bit because we can now acquire this additional 2 acres. And I think just have to be a better project. We provided some more information. I think Mike may not appreciated that just because we've gone so far down the road with our existing land and existing building that we have a pretty good idea. But I will tell you too, that it's not set in stone either. So I don't want to We think it's going to be a two-building project like what was represented, but that's really a schematic design. And so we haven't gone into detail, certainly haven't talked to staff about it, but it's just our idea. And we were just trying to give y'all a good sense of where we were, where our mindset was, and what we were trying to do. So we appreciate that.
But this zoning better fits what you want to do with the property or what you
Yes.
can do in order to make the other project better. So having this, it's definitely a benefit to y'all to have it rezoned,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is obvious. I mean, it's
Yes.
obvious, but it is.
Well, it's better from a standpoint, I think, of not only what we can develop there in terms of the type of building, but also it's just a good use of that site too, that, I'm not a land planner, but when you only got 2 acres there, it's hard to do a lot with 2 acres on a major interchange like that. So it's going to be tough to see how something else can be freestanding there and be as productive, I guess I would say.
Sounds good. Yeah, that intersection, that's, I won't call it dangerous, but it's an intersection that if people aren't paying attention and stop the all-way, there
tight.
could be a problems. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's very tight.
And, I don't know that it will ever need a signal, certainly not from your project, but at some point in time. The always stop when it's followed, it works well. But then again, having things going on in the intersection does tend to slow people down. It's a long discussion from a traffic engineer, which y'all probably don't want to hear. But one of the things that getting people to slow down helps. We've got rumble strips out there, which takes away, you don't really want residences next to rumble strips. Believe me, I did that in Nashville and I luckily escaped with my life. Long story. So yeah, an industrial use is better suited to that, I think. But anyway,
I just think that, Mike always reminds us to think about all the uses on
Mhm.
there, and I'm just thinking whether they have the 2 acres, whether they don't, that's not gonna keep
Mhm.
any of those uses from happening on other property.
that's right.
So. And to the gentleman's point, sure what you can do with the other 2 acres when it's surrounded by that warehouse or whatever else might end up going there, so.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir. Okay.
Jeff, I would add that I'm not arguing that 2 acres standing alone isn't difficult for a picture of something else. Not arguing that it's a bad, map. My concern is people have to build conditional zoning. I like it being where I would rather, if we're gonna have light industrial zoning, let's just say anywhere in town, I would rather be a warehouse than manufacturing. I think our residents would rather, if it's gonna have to be one of those or one of these, I would rather lock it in as warehouse than in other things, than leave it exposed. I think
Cool.
that's the words I'm looking. Much rather would have seen it as conditional zoning with that plan in front of me that I can speak to it. Because I like it, can't speak it. And be able to tell the people, look, it could be a lot of things. This is the least encroaching on us, and we could lock it in as a warehouse through conditional zoning, not just the 2 acres, but all 14 acres after 3 combined. We reduce the chance for your noise pollution, smell pollution greatly by locking it in. We did it through conditional zone. Can't have that conversation. That's what's frustrating.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I'm just saying that by right on the property that they already own, they can do any of those allowable uses by right. And having or not having that 2 acres isn't going to mitigate that from a negative standpoint.
And
And
you're taking that on the assumption that warehouses,
no,
12 or 14.
no, I'm just saying, no matter what the future use is, even if they don't build warehouses, Having that 2 acres or not having that 2 acres isn't gonna keep that from happening on the remaining acres that they already own.
Right, I get that. It
Yeah.
could be anything right now, and
Right.
having it under if it were in front of us conditionally as a warehouse, we could lock it in as a warehouse.
Yeah,
I-
well, no, I get that, but we can't at this point.
I think though, and maybe this is where Brian is going with this, but you know, the town and the residents and the school that are in that area would probably to have a breath of fresh air to know that that 14 acres is secured as a warehouse type of industrial use versus the other potential industrial uses, which right now could go anywhere virtually, but for those 2 acres.
Or still. without the
Right?
2
But
acres,
if
so-
the thing is, you know, it seems to me the advantage of conditional zoning is then we get to secure something for the town's benefit. It becomes, there becomes a trade-off that benefits us, and that's why we agree to rezone those 2 acres. Whereas if we just say, well, you know what, we might as well just color that little edge in purple because why not? It doesn't, there's no pros or, you know, it's all gonna end up the same. I mean, but
But
then
my point is
we're
that-
giving it away for free when we could be doing something that could
The point of conditional zoning was to get something.
to get something. And honestly, again, I understand they can still do the warehouse on the 12 acres that they have. They could sell it and someone could put in a animal feed manufacturing facility because that's allowed under light industrial. And I'm sure that that would smell and cause traffic. And I just think that, again, they're not here. But if the residents that lived in the MR30 across the street, I think if people whose children go to Mills River Elementary, if they were aware of this, they would want us to advocate for a use that, again, this could be a really good option for that land and prevent some other type of light industrial use going in at a different time. But if we just change it to light industrial zoning, the whole 14 acres, maybe there's a warehouse there, and then, you know, in 5 years, it becomes a hosiery manufacturing facility. I mean, anything, right? Even, you know, even if you do have a nice warehouse facility there for some period of time down the road, it could still change into anything that is allowed under light industrial.
Except in the
I
conditional.
guess, unless I'm missing something,
Right,
we
it-
can't do anything about the fact that it's not under conditional zoning, right?
Well, no, we can't, and that's why we've had this.
Yes.
conversation. We sent a unanimous Brandy branch to the council, and they sent it back to the board, folks, conditional zoning. Our role was not, we can't do that. But it's worth having a conversation with the board, isn't that why we created zoning, benefit the town?
But
then-
I'm talking about as it applies to this project, what can we do about it?
Nothing, but I feel like this is the example that we need to continue that conversation, and at this point, probably move on. I'm gonna struggle to vote against it, because the argument's sound.
And when conditional zoning was established, with the chapter 160D updates in the general statutes, because of that flexibility and also because of the negotiation the town or another public entity could have, that is why it must be initiated by
By
the
the
property
town,
owner
okay.
in writing. Because otherwise, they're basing their private property rights on our zoning districts. And again, the message that's put out publicly in our ordinance is about what to expect there. But that's state law, and again, it's because of that it must be initiated by the property owner.
Okay.
So we can't deny it and ask them, or by denying it, imply to them that they should.
To
Cover.
clarify, this goes to town council regardless of our advice.
You know, the board makes a recommendation.
Just want to
the
make sure you,
council.
you know, we
Right.
can't.
Now,
Right.
the board can ask the applicant for direction or can provide direction, but that's up to them.
Right.
So if this property is recombined or combined with the other,
Recombined.
yeah, I don't know if it's a recombination or combination or whatever. Would 2 acres of it be neighborhood commercial and the rest of it be light industrial if it's combined, or does the zoning change? Are there parcels of, can you recombine? Can you combine it into,
With
bigger
different
part.
zoning?
yes,
I mean, I'll defer to the applicant, but I don't think they would purchase it with it being neighborhood commercial because they would have no use for it, but I'd defer to
that's
them
their
for that.
business,
Yeah,
but where I'm going with this is if it's going to be combined into one big parcel
Without rezoning,
without
this
rezoning,
is question, without.
can it
rezoning.
be done? And would there be any reason to do that? Would they gain anything by doing that? Would they? I mean, basically, could they go ahead and do what they're gonna do, whether we rezone this or not?
not the concept plan that was
Not,
submitted.
right, they wouldn't be able to have a warehouse on that property, but they could possibly have two warehouses and still use this property.
I don't know that answer.
Yeah.
Because that, you're talking about a split zone, single parcel,
So
which
how-
we
but
we
how-
try to avoid, yeah.
How would that be better than just combining it if they're still using the whole property? They're just reconfiguring it.
Right, I mean, I'm not saying necessarily be better.
Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
just
I'm
trying to say,
hoping there's something I'm not seeing.
would
here.
there be, I mean, if we choose not to rezone it, could it still be combined? And it would be two separate zonings, one property, but then they would have more room and might be able to use it for something on the same property that they couldn't, like parking lots then would be in this 2 acres, or,
But
not
they'd be
sure.
associated with the principal use of an industrial facility and wouldn't be allowed then.
I'm not sure I
on
would
the
put the
neighborhood
money
commercial.
into buying the property if I couldn't use it for,
I'm just throwing it out there. What
I
if,
think Jeff's is asking if there's a workaround for them if the
No.
zoning gets turned down.
right, I mean, so are we then, by turning it down, gaining anything, any protection? If the surrounding land is going to be used anyway, what do we gain by turning it down? Does it make sense? Does it make sense to get rid of that parcel? Yeah, we're not going to possibly get the conditions that we would get through conditional zoning. But when the project comes back, would it still be a staff review? Okay,
If the rezoning goes through.
if it goes through, it's still going to be a staff review because it doesn't need a special use permit or anything like that. So,
Well, just to clarify, I'm always trying to spur the conversation along, but I don't see an argument to vote against this rezoning. I don't see it. I wish that we could solicit an applicant with an alternative type of application as opposed to the rezoning. I wish we could do that, but that's not a conversation to take their time up. I think this conversation proves that we need to have the ability to make a suggestion.
I agree, because then you'd have the ability to
Ask that,
try
to
to
Lisa's
mitigate
point.
things that maybe,
Sorry.
from a traffic standpoint, or
But-
anything else, maybe able to mitigate if you had that ability, but we don't.
we don't-
To Lisa's point, if you were to ask the residents, and if y'all don't know this, I live on one side of this and Jeff lives on the
I
other.
live on the
We
other.
both will be impacted by, I see, if you ask the residents right there, I'm fine with it either way. I'm surrounded by greenhouses. Who cares?
Mhm.
Those residents right there, to Lisa's point, I think they would love to be locked in knowing it's a warehouse.
Yeah.
But we don't have the opportunity to have that
Which
conversation
we
is
can
my
do with conditional
frustration.
Zoning, you're
But
saying.
I guess what I'm not following is if we recommended no to to council, council can then either disagree with us or agree with us. And if we recommend no and council then denies it, can't they come back with a conditional, can't they come back? I'm still not following why.
They can, but let me ask you a question. What's the statement of consistency to deny this? What's your argument in your statement of consistency to deny recommendation to council?
Well, it's, if what I'm hearing is that we're not, there's nothing that we can consider that would allow us to deny it.
I don't think there is I'm agreeing with you. I think we're agreeing. We're frustrated. We're not having a different conversation,
I agree with all
but we're
that.
having this one.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a statement of consistency to recommend a denial. And that's a
But-
long way to get there, but I think the
there's there's
conversation
a
was
draft
healthy.
for one.
I'm sorry?
There is a draft for one.
No, that's for an approval.
No,
No,
there's
There's
a
one
real
for
one.
denial.
Oh,
but-
okay. I'm sorry. I asked that. Where,
It's attachment N.
okay. And what is that argument,
This
Michael?
is something new staff's doing after,
Me and Brown Road? You can say it.
Brown Ridge.
It's, yeah, no, I,
that their staff going forward will present an option for each.
Oh,
and
okay.
It's up to the board, but again,
Oh, look at that.
what's before the board tonight is a conventional rezoning. And again, the decision should be made based on the land uses, the future land use map and the comp plan.
well, so I mean, the issue is right now,
Hmm.
we're talking about 2 acres of land where you cannot do light industrial that are across the street from a school there are other residential areas very close by. And, just because, again, it might be easy to shade in the puzzle piece, it doesn't mean that we should.
I'm sorry, we're not, this is the first ever statement of consistency for denial we've been given in the packet. So if you don't mind, while everyone else is talking,
Take a moment and read it.
yeah. Is it the conflict that we keep coming across, Michael?
The future land use map,
Yes, with the comp plan's undesirable list.
that is referenced in there.
Michael, if this isn't something you can answer or don't know, and I know you weren't here, but is there some credit given to the precedent that we've already rezoned the parcel that Arlie brought up right across the street?
No, because the legislative rezoning decisions stand separately.
Okay.
And we are allowed to ask the petitioners, right? You said we could ask them questions. I'm curious why you didn't use the conditional zoning why didn't you go through that process, knowing that you had both options? There must have been a reason that zoning seemed more, asking just for a straight out rezoning versus going through the conditional rezoning process. Was there something that made that distinction important to you?
My understanding is conditional rezoning is going through, us having to spend all our time and money to do a site plan and figure all that
Upfront.
out before we even get to a rezoning.
Mhm.
Whereas here, we've tried to give you maybe we've given you more information than we should have, but, we were just really trying to get it to be consistent with the other land we already owned for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So we would probably spend, I don't know, the other building, we basically had a permit for that or close to it. I mean,
Sure.
we'd already spent all of that money and time and effort and had a permit. We could have pulled a permit, probably back in October, November. Well, I'm sorry, I'm getting my time mixed up. But a couple of, 60
Sure.
days ago.
Sure.
And then this 2 acres came available to us and we just thought it'd make a better development.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, we'd be taking the same risks that we are now coming before the planning board, but only have spent a lot more money really
Upfront.
fine tuning a site plan. And we've tried to give you a good indication of what we're doing, but there's, like, that's our intent. And that's the road we're going down, but there's no guarantees either.
Now, the light ordinance came into effect after you had your original permits, correct? So now would this go back under our light ordinance?
We don't quite have the permit.
Does that make sense? Do you have to redo?
But the 170,000 square foot building that we've reviewed did not have the lighting ordinance applied to it.
So it could have had wall packs.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, sorry, they could have wall packs on it because the lighting ordinance was not in place when they applied originally, because we've been going back and forth on this plan for quite some
Right.
time. if the rezoning to light industrial happened and if they resubmitted, because it would be a resubmission, because it's different site, different
Mhm.
parcel, different project, the lighting ordinance would apply.
So
That's
I don't know if y'all are familiar with, we're never going to have dark skies anymore,
Mhm.
but we can have darker skies and just try to keep the light on the property and not blasting out into all the neighbors. So that would be, by it being resubmitted, that's something we would at least gain on the whole project
Mhm.
now instead of just this 2 acres.
Which we've done on other projects too. That's
Sure.
not unfamiliar to us.
Yeah, we,
This is very similar to a project we just finished. The shell construction's complete down in Rock Hill. I don't know if we have any pictures of that. Share. But it's just by coincidence. It's just very similar. We just finished 2 buildings that, I guess that really is not germane to what y'all are saying, because you're saying we could do anything. So let me.
well,
It's
no,
tough.
but
that.
yeah.
You're willing to have the conversation I
Well,
want to have.
you know-
It's so friendly. I want to have this guy in our neighborhood.
But that's not, that really
Well-
doesn't help this.
Well, since Lisa was allowed to ask that question, let me ask the question of if it was finances, or not finances, but expenses that kept us from doing conditional here. What beyond this, the conceptual site plan, what would be required to put in a conditional zoning? How much more would have to be submitted?
The same thing you saw with Brown Ridge, but that's concept plans for utilities. So that's points of connection. It's not fully engineered, but there's a lot more detail in it than building footprints and parking lot footprints on a map.
So there is more that would, quite a bit more to go
Yes.
from
And
this.
because the building locations change and because there's also a sewer main running under the middle of this parcel that the applicant, I think, would be relocating
Mhm.
on behalf of MSD Buncombe County. Again, there's a lot
Okay.
that would change.
So there is a lot of expenses involved.
But those site plans would have to be done eventually anyways?
Yeah, the difference is it's post-permit versus pre-permit.
Yeah.
Pre-permit, they
Post.
don't get back.
Yeah.
Post
So like with Brown Ridge, they spent all their money
Yeah.
and Yeah.
Sorry. So it's
So
a matter
spent
of
all their
risk.
money. Okay, are there any discussion?
My only other comment is the traffic likely is going to be there without the 2 acres or with it, but the lighting change would be more impactful if they had this for the surrounding parcels, if they had those other 2 acres, that.
You're
changes-
saying there's a community gain by this,
That's what I'm
if
saying,
they
yeah.
stick with,
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Right.
Sure. Yeah,
not that they're going to go with
Because the
upward
the
lighting.
original 170,000 square foot is it still active enough that it would not require the lighting?
Yeah, the lighting ordinance doesn't apply at all because just like how we've been talking about grandfathering in uses
Right.
for a potential rural residential zoning change. When they originally submitted their permit for the 170,000 square foot building, it was before that ordinance had been adopted in our code.
Mhm.
And so only the regulations in place at the time of that adoption were applied through the staff reviews. Now,
So-
they may be incorporating it. We didn't ask for the fixture specifications or the light study
Sure.
because it wasn't there in the code.
Wasn't there yet.
So I think the assumption over here, if you could confirm it, is that a recombination and the expansion of this, to this concept plan would require a new permit, which would be subject to the lighting ordinance.
Yeah, it'd be a resubmission.
Okay, I just want to make sure we made that assumption here, or at least that's what I heard.
that's what I thought you said, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're confirming. Okay.
So the one thing we can guarantee is we get
If
compliance
they-
with the
if they
lighting
develop it
ordinance.
as a warehouse, yeah.
Well, if they develop it at all.
If they,
anything.
that's right,
that's true.
anything that goes there.
Okay. I also don't, for lack of, at the
Right.
risk of alienating staff, but I mean, I'm not- I appreciate the denial. I just don't agree that that would actually be a reason for denial. So, because I mean, if you look at, all that's, when you have, a warehouse or a manufacturing facility one way and then other land that's going to
Mhm.
be used for that purpose and other warehouses just beyond it, I don't know if I'd agree with that as a reason for denial. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't see anything jump out.
Do we have any more comments or is anyone ready to make a motion anytime?
I don't know if Lisa got her question answered, but
Did that?
if we denied it, I'm not saying I believe that, but just to answer, but if it's denied, it could go to council. Council could say, no, we don't agree with that move in the other direction, right? There's no process to say that the applicant would need to, one, if council disagreed, or would even want to, or even would come back and go under and submit it under, and I think we already heard that, under conditional zoning, so. Okay. I'm just thinking out loud, sorry. I have no points.
I'll say that we look at it from the technical standpoint, and based on how it fits surrounding areas, how it fits the comprehensive plan, how it, meets the requirements, and, if someone wants to make a motion either for or against, and it's based on how you feel it meets either side, either it does or it doesn't.
Well, I just try to think about the residents of Mills River, and I think that whether they have those 2 acres or not, there's traffic, right? That traffic's gonna be there,
That's correct.
but we have no control over the lighting if they don't have those 2 acres.
That's
And I
correct.
think the negative feedback may very well happen with lighting. I'm not saying they're doing that, but I'm saying that
Right.
lighting that could go out, because the traffic's gonna be there one way or the
Right.
other. But the ability to change the lighting and mitigate that with approving this is very favorable to me. Because when you go you go up 280 past
Oh,
the grocery store Bonanza there, you
Right.
go around the curve and all you see on the hill is the lights from the storage facility. That's not what we want to see here. And so
Yeah.
this would allow, that to be mitigated, so.
I mean, that's one
Right.
of the positives.
Yeah.
I don't know that the conversation needs to end with forgetting there could be a long list of negatives,
Yeah,
unfortunately, with the allowables.
but at
I-
least the lighting would be.
Mhm.
Yes, the very loud, obnoxious sounding and smelling manufacturing plant is beautiful lighting.
In the dark.
Um, I don't know that there's strong enough argument against it. I would like to see the conversation be different. Maybe the town council will have more flexibility in that. I don't know that we do.
Yeah, that takes it from the technical decision to the political decision.
Yeah.
And, based on council's vision, and, we interpret council's vision through the comprehensive plan, and, the ordinances as they exist. They have the opportunity to look at it in a different light sometimes, so.
I'm not going to make a motion, but if you're loose polling anybody, I'll be in favor of sending this to town council and hope that town council has a very long conversation.
Well, if someone would like to make a motion either for or against, chair would certainly entertain that. Don't everyone speak at once?
Yeah, I'll fall on the act. I mean, based on our discussion, I'll make a motion that we approve this rezoning as written.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion. Mr. Cole, second, Mr. Kimsey. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And all opposed? All right. Thank y'all.
And
Look
before we
forward to
move
seeing-
on, sorry.
Yes,
statement
we
of
need to do the
consistency.
statement of consistency. So we
Not that one.
basically,
You
the
wanna-
motion would
know,
be
I
to
got you.
adopt the statement of consistency without having to read every word of it.
Yeah, I would say, to adopt the statement of consistency for approval or for recommending approval as presented.
Okay.
Do I have to say that?
Would you like to say that?
That's why I shouldn't have made the motion. So,
Well, you,
all right, so if I mess this up, just, go through. I'm making a motion. Okay, I'm making a motion that we adopt the statement of consistency for the rezoning R-24-04 as written.
and, okay. Okay, we need a second. Anyone want to second
I'll
that?
second.
Mr. Kimsey will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we're good, and I will sign that.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank y'all for
Appreciate
coming.
your time.
Second question, can Jeff vote different on the council than he voted on? the
Oh,
school
he's
board
gonna,
for
we're
the
gonna
same
start the phone calls
software?
coming right as we're done here. Lobbying group will be meeting out in the lobby.
Yeah, catch me on the way out.
Video.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
we-
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
for your
Thanks.
time.
And that's along that conversation. you
That was
know,
good,
as,
yes.
as a planning board member versus a council member, I'm gonna have to switch hats and look at it from a different way, because this is the planning board, and I think we're gonna be talking about this over the next couple of meetings or something like that. You know, the expectation from the technical standpoint is there, especially Board of Adjustments, a very technical. Whereas a council, it's, there are other things that you can consider. So
Yeah, we're learning.
I hate to see this go away as a farm. I really do. My daddy knew Mr. Whiteside. I believe this Mr. Otto Whiteside's property, and he knew Mr. Whiteside, and, you know, had a lot of respect for him, and, you know, and Mr. Hefner, the Bergens, all the land up through there, you know, and, you know, it's changing. Mills River's changing. So anyway, with that being said, now we get to look forward. We're going to be, we have our next item.
Can I say one more thing?
Of course, please do.
Along the lines of what you're discussing and the way we look at it versus council looks at something and so forth. And this for a future conversation, not now, for the planning board. But I do think that it seems to me that when we do all this work that we do, and I know maybe the council looks at things differently than we do, but I don't know that they get the full story of all the work that we've done. And I would put a thought in everybody's mind as to how we can make presentations as a planning board before council so they can get the full impact of why we made a decision we did rather than just the vote. So,
That's a conversation we can have with council in about a month.
I know a
Or
guy.
sooner if you want, yeah. Where possibly the chair of the planning board. Now, as a planning board member, I would think you're more than welcome. Of course, it's great to have planning board in the audience, and be ready in case you're called on. I think in most cases, the chair would speak for the planning board and say, here's what we discussed, et cetera. And then if, let's say it's a 3-4 vote, council may want to hear from both sides, if that helps illuminate the picture.
yeah,
There are council members watching. I know I plan to watch in the future. I won't come here and sit and look over your shoulders, or unless you want me to. But, you know, I think that there are a lot of council members, several members are watching, if not everyone.
and I may be wrong, but it seems to me when there are discussions on various topics that maybe because that's what we're focused on are facts, you know,
Mhm.
maybe there are facts that aren't evident just in the vote that are, you know, that may help council, which is our job, make a better decision. So I would love the opportunity to be able to more than just here was the vote on it. And
Mhm.
if you read it or if you watched, great. But anyway, that's future discussion. So
I'd just advise with that, since Mr. Moore is going to be rolling off the planning board once he assumes the council seat, that we probably have that discussion with whoever the new chair of the planning
Sure.
board is afterwards, and coordinate with that through the town manager for those types of items.
yeah, and it was just a thought
Sure.
put out there.
I
Sorry
think
about
that's a good
Oh,
thought.
good.
Yes. Good discussion.
And I was just going to say before that was different subject was product, but Michael, I appreciate you keeping me on track. It's really hard when you have a great applicant like that who wants to have a conversation and cares, and we care, and we want to say, but the people would say this if they, it's so hard. It's so easy. I'm sorry
Mhm.
to go down that. So I appreciate you keeping us in check on that.
Yeah.
No disrespect intentionally done there.
There's no issues, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's hard when they provide the site plan as
Yeah.
well and want to have
Yeah.
the conversation. It's more for the board's protection that,
Right.
you know, if we get into a driveway and someone associates that
That-
with the denial, that it could turn into a legal item.
Well, I
Yeah.
don't want the
That's-
applicant to say exactly what it's my fault he said it. Maybe we gave you too much information. That is not what I
Yeah.
want an applicant
And,
to say.
you know,
I
one thing,
want- you know, so.
sure. One thing we think about is, and with public comment, and this is a hard line and I'm sorry to drone on here, but as a planning board, we welcome public comment. We may or may not be able to make our decision based on public comment, because if 10 people show up, 7 of them are for a project, 3 against, we as a planning board may, after listening to their input And hearing the facts and hearing that, we may decide against it, even though 7 people are for it. Or it may be the opposite. 3 people are for it, 7 people are against it. We may not make our decision based on that, because we think about the technical aspects. And then when it gets to council, then it becomes, all right, we're getting majority of people are against this. So it's a different hat we wear. And to think about, well, what will people want? That's reflected in the comprehensive plan and in the ordinances and the UDO for us. Whereas at council, they're getting phone calls, and I'm sure my number will be published somewhere, or a number will be published somewhere.
That's right.
Yeah. And, that's where we take that input
Directions.
and bring that to the table. So where ours is a technical decision, council is a political decision. So we benefit council by providing them with the technical aspects of a project and allowing, our input on how it meets or doesn't meet the
But when
comprehensive plan itself.
I'm sorry to drone
Oh.
out myself, but when the public asks a question and doesn't have the fact and the town council responds with the fact that's not correct, then there's something missing, is my
Sure.
point.
Sure.
And so it's just better for both the public and the town council to be aware of the details of whatever it is that we create. So I'll stop there.
Sure.
I
Now, council
apologize.
gets, do they get minutes from the planning board? No?
The only thing we deliver for a rezoning or land use amendment like that is the statement of consistency,
Sure.
which contains the recommendation
Okay.
and the vote.
Okay. It's a
That's-
public hearing.
That's, you're saying the planning board minutes?
Well, the difference with us, like, put a sign, property that way public knows, but we don't have those standards.
Correct. Yeah,
Hard, it is put up between us. Technically put on our website, the planning board.
Agendas, right?
so yeah, there's.
Put
On
out
the
a
public notice side, you're correct. Public hearings are the ones that require the state mandated notice, and that's specifically for council. These are public meetings, so the agenda is posted, but that additional mailing or sign is not included. And then to the minutes, you're correct. Usually it takes us 2 to 2.5 months to schedule the public hearing because of those notice requirements. So in certain cases, the planning board minutes may be up on the website and approved by the time council has the public hearing, but they're not provided as part of the packet.
Mhm.
That's our disadvantage. We can't get the public yet.
Right. And we do take public input, and I don't want people or anyone in here to think that we ignore the public input, because the public neighbors may see things that we don't see. They can bring up questions that we can ask, the applicant can respond to, and that helps us gather the information. So the public input is great to have here.
I would
It's just
argue we
not the
can't
political-
use it that much on decisions like the one we just made, but if it were conditional zoning, we could have given it heavy weight. But there we go.
Right. If they're not aware. So, okay. Sorry, Mr. Webb. Thank you so much for
Sorry
being
about
here.
that.
So if
So-
you would like this.
Yeah, just quick intro. So,
Yeah.
Kevin Webb, our planning technician, finished his master's degree recently, Masters of Public
Woo-hoo.
Affairs.
All
and for
right.
His capstone.
Well done.
For his master's capstone project, we worked together on a project focused on the town of Mills River, but outside of his normal duties. And so he put together an affordable and workforce housing policy analysis and recommendations as part of his master's thesis project. And we thought it'd be a great idea to present to y'all.
Heck yeah.
Again, this is just informational, just.
We can't affect his grade? Oh, come on,
I
man.
already-
Oh,
I already
no,
did.
you lost me.
Well, I appreciate such a large crowd. Thank you. It's great.
But you got the TV audience.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
that's right.
Yeah. All right. So as Mike said, my capstone project was on affordable and workforce housing policy for the town of Mills River. So just to go through an introduction, what is a capstone project? Capstone project is a semester-long project used in the MPA program. That's the final assignment per se. Just think of it as a comprehensive demonstration of all the skills and knowledge I acquired through the MPA program. My project topic was affordable and workforce housing. It was about finding a solution to a real world problem through a series of research and analysis of affordable housing literature and qualitative data methods. So why was this project selected? One of the key issues that drew Mills River to partnering with a capstone student is just the lack of policy in place for affordable and workforce housing and how it is a goal identified in the town's comprehensive plan. In the program, you'll see up there NASPA competencies. Those are considered the pillars of the program, what we're supposed to take out of it when we graduate. There are 5 of them. I'm going to read them off. Number 1 is to lead and manage in the public interest. Number 2 is to participate in and contribute to the policy process. Number 3, to analyze, synthesize, and critically solve problems and make evidence-based decisions in a complex and dynamic environment. 4, to articulate, apply, and advance a public service perspective. 5, to communicate and interact productively in a culturally responsive way with a diverse and changing workforce and society at large. Those are a lot of words there. The 3 most embraced competencies I argue for this project that were displayed were to lead and manage in the public interest, to participate in and contribute to the policy process, and to articulate, apply, and advance a public service perspective. To go to the scope of the project, so what's the problem? I said before, there's limited, if any, affordable and workforce housing in Mills River. There's currently no policy or land development regulations to promote affordable and workforce housing in Mills River. For my time here, not a single affordable unit has been permitted in the town. Some of the objectives of the project were to analyze and propose affordable housing policy that is compatible with the community and present it to the town's planning board, which I'm doing here tonight. Review, analyze, and synthesize a magnitude of land use policy that promotes affordable and workforce housing. And 2 of the main goals here are to educate and promote a public policy perspective on affordable and workforce housing. The deliverable is to recommend land use policy to increase affordable and workforce housing in Mills River to the town's planning board as tonight. Initially with my project, it was a staff report that I was going to present, turned into a presentation. So this is great because it helps me, work on my public speaking skills, which is something in my profession I'm going to need to work on. So
Doing good. That's right.
and then, this is the breakdown on a larger discussion on the education level, per se. So what will this presentation cover? So it's broken down into a staff report. That's how it was set up initially. Background, discussion, policy analysis, recommendations. And then kind of putting everything together from my project, my paper, into those categories. So for the project, the background, we're going to look at the definitions within the scope of my project, give a little general overview on housing in Western North Carolina, a brief overview of Mills River. For the discussion section, we're going to bring up the mixed use zoning discussion that we've had recently, the comp plan policy analysis. We're going to look at my methods and approaches to this project through the interview process that I conducted, stakeholder analysis I conducted, talk about the City of Hendersonville Affordable Housing Steering Committee. I attended that first ever meeting, and then go through the literature review, which is where most of my policy recommendations, the background comes from. And then lastly, give my recommendations. So going into definitions, my project, I will say, broken down into 3 categories: community development definitions, policy toolkit definitions, and legislative procedures. I'm not going to go into all these, but I will define what, affordable, I'll define the community development definitions and density bonuses in the policy toolkit. Y'all should be somewhat aware of what accessory dwelling units are, I'm sure. Overlay districts and the traditional, conventional, and conditional zoning map amendments, text amendments. Y'all are professionals on that. So what's affordable housing? So per HUD, affordable housing is to persons whose incomes are 80% or less of the area median income. Workforce housing is affordable to persons whose incomes are between 60% and 120% of the area median income. This varies by institution, but those are the ones for the scope of my project that I used. Housing gap, the number of housing units needed or could be supported by various income levels. On a personal level, personally, I would fall into that workforce housing category as starting my profession in local government based off my income level. Workforce housing would be where I would fall into just for the working class people. It's not Section 8 housing or project housing. This is like that. For the policy toolkit definitions, I'm just going to talk about what the defined density bonuses. So basically, density bonuses are to allow an increase in maximum development. In return, the applicant for the development supports or contributes to a public policy goal, affordable housing. So now we're going to go into the background part. So demographics and housing trends. I'm just going to give some statistics. These could vary based off who you talk to or, the organization. But between 2009 and 2018, Henderson County's population increased by roughly 18,000 per the Bowen report. Tell you what that is later. Just to give a fact, the AMI in 2020 for Western North Carolina was $56,000. And the 2025 projection is $66,500. This number could vary here, but median sales price in Mills River as of October 30th, 2024 is $692,498 per allentate.com. In Mills River, 84.6% of the housing is owner occupied per the American Community Survey from 2018 to 2022. So two general factors that impact the housing market. As y'all probably know, the net migration of people moving to here is increasing. The supply of housing available to accommodate demand, it's not all there. Less supply causes surges in prices of homes available. Those are just two general factors I want to point out. So what is the big picture? The lack of affordable and workforce housing is not a unique problem, but Mills River is a unique environment to foster affordable housing policy due to its rural character and low density. I argue that land use regulations and policy are the largest tools for local government to increase affordable and workforce housing. Additionally, it should be noted that political feasibility and public feedback are and will be the two largest components to fostering policy change. So on the screen here, you'll see something I got from the Bowen report. It's a housing assessments report done by the Bowen Research Center. It's a national research center. This is, if you look right here, this is from so this is from one of the pages in the Regional Housing Assessments Needs for Western North Carolina report, the Bowen report. Here, the estimates are HUD formats for owner housing gap estimates, basically number of units needed to accommodate people at various income levels for housing. So you have on the screen, that works, nope. 50% or less area median household income. Then you got 51 to 80% area median household income, 81 to 120% area median and household income. And then the types of housing are broken down into family and senior housing. And the numbers in red are the largest housing gap estimates for owner housing based off the study areas, Western North Carolina. As you'll see here, Henderson County has the second largest housing gap estimate for family housing in Western North Carolina. So there's roughly a 1,200 unit housing gap for family housing in Henderson County across all these area median household incomes. The area median household income in Henderson County in 2022 was $65,508 per the U.S. Census Bureau. You'll see senior housing there. to the right of family housing on the right side of the chart. What is senior housing? It's basically housing for people that are 62 years old or older. The family housing is the general, is what's used for general occupancy. This can vary based off the amount of people that live in your house. So it varies. So overall consensus from this, it is becoming more difficult or is difficult for lower income levels in the middle class to acquire for sale housing or housing in general. And I just chose this chart to explore. So y'all should definitely know all this. Scribe Mills River. You're the locals. I'm from I live in Eddyville. So, Mills River was incorporated in 2003. The informal goal behind incorporation was to protect the longstanding farming and rural community from development pressures from the surrounding areas, Buncombe County, Fletcher, Hendersonville. The community is approximately 22 square miles, very, very large for the population. It's traditionally an agricultural and low density community. The government was established as a limited service government. We have a large and diversified tax base. You think about all the different, just the different sectors of commercial and just all over the town. And a large portion of the town is in a watershed district. So we're going to go to the discussion session. We're going to talk about the mixed use zoning discussion that we've been having in the town. So background on the mixed use zoning discussion. This all started, from the Annex 2301 and associated R 2302. Initially, a property owner wanted his property annexed in the town under mixed use zoning. Ultimately, the voluntary annexation was denied due to the uncertainty around MRMU and open zoning policies. Basically, zoning this in would allow anything. All uses for MRMU were taken into consideration in the denial by council. Lack of regulation opens the door to development that may or may not be desired via comp plan. So how do we, the question was, how do we preserve the rural character and appearance of Mills River? So board feedback at the April 2nd, 2024 planning board meeting. Some of these some questions that were taken into consideration were, what is rural? Where in town is most rural? I don't know why I have a hard time saying that word, working on it. What area of the town should be rezoned to the proposed rural residential zoning district as noted in the future land use area of the town? We looked at minimum lot sizes and what uses should be allowed. Overall, the board directed staff to start working on draft language for moving away from the mixed use zoning and creating a new residential zoning district based on Henderson County's R2R zoning uses. In addition, remove the future land use map designation of commercial crossroads from the future land use map at the intersection of Ray Hill Road and Highway 280. So another consensus was feedback was needed from council before continuing with a formal text amendment for the rural residential rezoning. At the April 11th council meeting, consensus was that feedback was needed from property owners. There were concerns about over limiting non-residential uses. So status as of today of MR rural residential, the text amendment for MR rural residential passed. We had the October 2024 public hearing, incredible public turnout. It was great. And now it's been tabled for consideration by council at a later date. So overall, I believe why I'm talking about this, I believe this discussion could potentially start a larger discussion in how we need to use other elements of the comprehensive plan and use zoning and land use policies to accomplish these goals. We have multiple goals, how do we preserve the rural character of Mills River? Housing is also one of those goals in the comp plan. So let's go to the making, the comprehensive plan. So element 6 of the comprehensive plan is titled Housing and Neighborhoods. These are some of the things that you'll see in that element, a need for diverse workforce housing choices of all types, sizes, and densities. The availability of workforce housing. and then what incentives there are for desired housing. So preserving rural character of the town is important, I feel, but there also needs to be more of a discussion on what the town can do to assist foster more diverse housing types. You know, to balance lowering density in a larger area of town, there needs to be increased density in the town's core areas. That's what my project is saying. Development is inevitable, and zoning is the key to regulating where development should and should not be in alignment with our comprehensive plan. So there's a lack of middle housing. You know, what's middle housing? You know, we're looking at not just single family housing. You know, you're looking at duplexes, triplexes, ADUs, mother-in-law apartments, guest cottages, stuff to increase housing. So some of the goals we're going to look at for this section of the comp plan were to identify existing housing types, identify areas where development for housing may be provided, and also encourage preservation of open space through higher density building types. Some of the metrics in this section of the comp plan were housing affordability according to market prices and median household income, as you all know, skyrocketing. The number of dwelling units permitted and constructed, and the change in average lot sizes for town lots and rural residential development. You know, the comp plan is a guiding document to all land use planning in Mills River. How can we use that to implement more diverse housing types? We'll see in the following slides. So you see here, I just included some, you know, just took a screenshot of, you know, the pages in the comp plan. So you'll look at performance metrics. That's where I got the performance metrics. And you'll have potential partners and collaborators. You'll see where those come in with my stakeholder analysis. And then where, you know, the objectives we're looking at related to my project. Objective 2.2, looking at a variety and mix of housing types, highlight some of the policies there, like for instance, policy 2.2.5, establish zoning districts and targeted development areas that specify the types of housing allowed in different areas within Mills River. You'll go to objective 2.8, availability of workforce and affordable housing. In our comp plan, policy 2.8.1 says define workforce housing and establish goals for the provision of workforce housing in Mills River. These are things you'll see in, you know, statements of consistency typically. Objective 2.9, incentives for desired housing. You know, pursue opportunities to provide financial or other incentives for desired housing developments where market rate solutions are not available. The one thing I want to note is the UDO project could be an opportunity to review these objectives and policies in this section of the comprehensive plan. Sorry, let me get some water. Apologize. Thank you. So this is something you'll see in the planning literature, in planning profession. You'll see this missing middle housing illustration. On the left side, you'll see traditionally detached single family housing. On the right side, you'll see the mid-rise apartments. Don't look at the right side for Mills River, as we know. But look at the stuff in the middle. There's a lot of things missing where we could provide missing middle housing if we had the zoning for it. So some of these things, could be accessory dwelling units, duplexes, triplexes, townhomes. Let's say you have some acreage in town and you want to give your family member, you know, an accessory dwelling unit, have something built out for them to live in because they can't afford to have their own land and pay for their own housing as things are just nuts. That's something that be defined as missing middle housing, ADUs. Why do we need missing or middle housing? You know, it provides housing for more generational residents, and it provides housing potentially for aging family members. We have a lot of large and expensive single family houses in our town. And we currently have one townhome project being built out. Our zoning regulations are outdated and they don't allow flexibility for different housing types. policy analysis section of project. So here we'll look at methods and approaches. I conducted tons of interviews with professionals around the field that I'll show you in the next slide. I did a stakeholder analysis by using potential partners and collaborators from the comp plan and using the organizations I interviewed as potential partners and collaborators for this. And then I attended, as I'll go down the road, just the City of Hendersonville Affordable Housing Steering Committee. Their first ever meeting I attended. It was very interesting, and I'll go on that. Something just additional for the project, as I had to show the competencies and how to engulf that in my capstone paper. I created a policy flow chart on future land use map amendments, zoning map amendments, text amendments, basically outlining how it's initiated, how it goes through the planning board, how it goes to council, and just how the decisions decide where it goes. And I'm going to give each of y'all an individual copy of that. And then the literature review, which is the most important part of my project. So these are the people I interviewed, typically policy experts and practitioners. I interviewed Jeffrey Barton, the CEO of Mountain Housing Opportunities up in Asheville. Interviewed Stephanie Walken Cruz, the Director of Housing Policy with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Interviewed Susan Frady. At the time was the interim executive director and project planner for Housing Assistance Corporation in Hendersonville. Lou Holloway, the community development director of the city of Hendersonville. Anna Patterson, senior policy analyst with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Interviewed Sean Rose, director of new construction at the Housing Assistance Corporation. And Lisa Saturno, the president and CEO for Henderson County Habitat for Humanity. The interviews the questions were given in a uniform format. Let me go get that real quick. So typically the questions, they were all standard questions revolving around background information, what policies they would recommend to promote a more affordable and workforce housing in general, not relation to Mills River, but just in general. The questions were kind of tailored based off where they were located on geography. So, some of the questions I asked Jeffrey Barton were a little different from who I asked for Sean Rose. So the common themes and takeaways from these interviews were increased density in areas that you want more desired housing. You want more housing, and then provide more options for a variety of housing, looking at the missing middle housing. One thing to note is I made some positive relationships with them, and hopefully, they're an opportunity to be potentially partners in the future. So this is my stakeholder analysis. I made it on Canva. It's a power interest matrix tool. So all those little sticky notes on there are stakeholders in, for my project. So you'll see there's on the left, on the y-axis, which is the vertical axis, you'll have interest. On the horizontal axis below, you have power, and it's based off low to high on each side. So, basically each variable defines how to manage one's relationship with each player. Some things you would look at are, keep satisfied, what players to keep satisfied, what players to manage closely, what players to monitor, and what players to keep informed. For instance, in the top right quadrant, managing closely would be, partnership or partners with town council and the town manager, because they have high interest and power in the goal of increasing housing choices in Mills River. So there needs to be a close relationship. So, and then I'll say the planning board. The planning board's an advisory board they have high interest, but not necessarily high power in the decision-making process. So you'll see on the left side, top left, quadrant, planning board members, town's planning department have high interests, but low power in the decision-making process. So those are all based off the, their power in the making the decisions. So here's this policy flow chart. Wanted to give y'all just to have. So yeah, just maybe a good tool to have. I'm sure I could work on adding more things, but basically it just goes through, how the amendment, comprehensive plan amendment, text amendment, future land use map amendment, and zoning map amendment are initiated. If it's town initiated or public initiated, takes you through the process, going through the planning board, and takes you through the process through council. So feel free to read through that and take a look at it. Water. It's color coded. That matters. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about the local engagement. I attended the first ever City of Hendersonville Affordable Housing Steering Committee meeting. Committee was funded through a grant by the Dogwood Health Trust to create a strategic affordable housing plan for the City of Hendersonville. Some of those people on that committee were city council members, City of Hendersonville, Mr. Bill Lapsley, County Commissioner, City of Hendersonville Attorney, real estate agents, builders, and the list goes on with the people there. They read a book called Strategies for Putting Housing Within Reach and Keeping It There, The Affordable City by Shane Phillips. He works for and manages the Randall Lewis Housing Initiative at the UCLA Lewis Center for Regional Policy Studies. I did not read this book, but I intend to read it down the road. It's just something they brought up. There were concerns about him being from California, but I actually, believe it or not, some of the things over in California can apply over here in Mills River. So he was a speaker too. The Land of Sky, they had think of it as a speaker and invited different people to come in and listen to this guy talk. I'm going to look more into that and see what happened with that. But I haven't kept up with it. So what are the lessons learned? This is a practical example of what other municipalities are doing to increase affordable housing through a strategic planning process. This is possibly something down the road for Mills River. Literature review. So there are 4 areas of focus with my literature review. Public affairs literature, affordable housing policy tools and methods, regional data and policy, and legal procedures and guiding documents. Most of the stuff I'm going to talk about is affordable housing policy tools and methods. And then you're going to wonder what the heck I'm talking about with the public affairs literature and how this relates to this. But in terms of getting those NASPA competencies down, something that was part of my project. Public affairs literature. So these are some of the theories and concepts that I want to talk about. The first one is problem analysis. Of course, with my project, looking at the issue of the lack of affordable housing, this was the starting point. Some of the steps are to define the problem, measure the problem, determine the extent or magnitude of the problem, find the causes of the problem, set goals and objectives, and lastly, determine what can be done. Not all incorporated into my project, but just to say something to relate to Mills River, there's no one clear cause to the problem of a lack of affordable housing. There's no one clear solution, I want to point out, to the problem either. You know, the solutions should be community specific and accomplish the goals the public wants to achieve through the comp plan, through public feedback, through, what we saw with the rural residential public feedback. Great stuff. Next concept theory is policy learning. This stuff I'm not going to go deep into. just want to get that out. So policy learning, you have instrumental learning, learning about the viability of policy instruments or implementation designs, basically learning through education from policy experts. Think of a strategic planning process. This could relate to my project because when people get new information, there's ways of receiving that information that we need to recognize. So instrumental learning, basically learning through the education from policy experts. Not going to go beyond that. Social learning entails lessons about the social construction of policy problems, the scope of policy or policy goals. So social learning is learning through the public feedback process in the community in general to make a well-informed decision, just like the rural residential rezoning. We had that public feedback. And then there's this thing called bounded rationality. What is that? It's a major component in the public affairs literature about the decision-making process. How decision makers make decisions. It recognizes that people make decisions that aren't perfectly rational because of limited time. We don't have the time to, think about every option available. So we have to make decisions in a timely manner. And there are cognitive and social limitations to those. 3 different subcategories of bounded rationality are organization as a machine, organization as a hierarchy, and organization as a canal. This is a concept plan from my professor, JoBeth Shafran. She wrote the article that I'm talking about this information from. Organization as a machine. The decision-making process is based off a cost-benefit analysis. So members making decisions off straight cost-benefit analysis. Organization as a hierarchy, creating divisions of labor to expand problem-solving capacities and lower time to make rational decisions. Think of advisory boards, steering committees, helping the decision makers through basically dividing up the responsibility. Just think of it that way. Organization as a canal, it looks at the function of human cognition and how it makes it difficult for one to update their preferences as new information comes in. Think of emotional stimuli and how one's decisions or decision-making capabilities are limited to past experiences and environment. Let's say in Mills River, low density, keeping the rural character of the town. That is something that this theory says that, it may not be there intentionally, the emotional stimuli, but it's there, It can alter perception on public policy as new information is learned. So it's just saying that this is saying that has an impact in how people, look at new policy learning. We tend to be narrow to decision making in our canal of emotional stimuli. So, basically how I see it and how I've always seen it, growing up, it's going to be hard to change that. And that's something that this theory recognizes. And it's just human nature. There's no right or wrong to it. This is the nitty gritty stuff. Affordable housing policy tools and methods. So these are 4 reports I looked at. The first one is the UNC Chapel Hill Affordable Housing Toolkit for Local Governments. One thing I want to note is, give a case example of what Durham, North Carolina did. They completed a expanding housing choices initiative. It was an initiative started by the city county planning department to develop, develop an initiative on housing to address the housing affordability. Some of the objectives were to allow for more housing opportunities that are highest in demand, stabilize housing prices by increasing supply to meet demand, and protect the character of neighborhoods where change is happening. Some of the policy changes they implemented were to expand areas where accessory dwelling units are allowed. And also they want to allow, they allowed more duplexes in majority of their zoning districts. So increasing that missing middle housing. They created a new housing type called small houses. So small houses are capped out at 1,200 square feet. Maximum height is 25 feet, and the maximum building footprint is 800 square feet. So no McMansions per se. That's a case study. The second resource I looked at was called Increasing the Supply of New Affordable Housing, a primer of strategies to implement today. This was published by HUD. Basically, it was a toolkit that I looked at, and the four main strategies were: 1, effective use of public funds; 2, effective use of external funds; 3, land use and entitlement policies. That's where I dove into it. That's where I looked mainly. And 4, development of public property. Some of the type of land use and entitlement policies that were talked about were density bonuses, again, permitting accessory dwelling units, and the use of zoning overlay districts to accomplish a public policy goal. The third thing I looked at was from the Western Piedmont Housing Growth, Western Piedmont Council of Government, but their housing growth toolkit they published. It was basically created to assist local governments in implementing policy for affordable and workforce housing. The steps to the toolkit were to review housing types, survey neighborhoods, identify needs, review strategies, and modify and adopt codes to address those needs. Sorry, I'm gonna get my water. Some of the takeaways from this were, increasing middle housing in areas where density is higher in the community. Increased density for residential housing were allowed. For instance, where public sewer and water utilities are located. Reduce the time it takes to go through zoning approvals, cost time and money, and allow manufactured homes in all zoning districts. So some of the takeaways I got from that, looking at that toolkit. The fourth thing I looked at was the 2040 Comprehensive Plan for Greenville, South Carolina. This is a golden case study example. I learned about it from the master's program and the community development elective I took. So basically the concept with this plan I'm going to take away for tonight is the use of density nodes are noted in that comprehensive plan to preserve open space and increase density in your core areas of town. Greenville, South Carolina, and Mills River are quite different, but the same planning strategies can apply. And this can help preserve open space in ag and Mills River while promoting more housing choices in select areas of town where your zoning will allow for it. And this can stop eating up land to a large estate lots, ultimately taking up your open space. So here's a illustration of their density nodes from their comprehensive plan. Of course, first thing you'll note is there's a downtown on here. This is considered urban planning. We don't have a downtown, but you can consider that downtown where you'll have increased density, your core areas of town. And I'm going to talk about, where those are at. Think about in the red, you'll see nodes. Those are where you could have medium density per se, more than one dwelling per 30,000 square feet. Those could be where public utilities are. where you can provide more housing. Keep the density there. And then in the blue, you have your rural residential housing, where you want things to be low density, kind of what was, what the rural residential zoning of, let's say, one dwelling per 1.5 acres talks about. So zoning can be used to where you want to put, where you want your density to go, or where you want to keep things open. Think of the green as open space. You're using less space for more housing and using less land, therefore preserving it. We're not gonna have high rises in Mills River, but there's a potential to have medium density housing or increased density housing to accomplish more than, potentially accomplish both comprehensive plans of keeping Mills River rural and also providing more housing choices, desired housing for the people that live here and work here. Yeah. This was my this was where I got all my regional data and policies. Really long report, 400 something pages. I intend to read through it more, but it basically breaks down, housing trends throughout Western North Carolina. Henderson County, of course, is in there. It's called the Housing Needs Assessment of Western North Carolina. It's the 2021 Bowen report, conducted by the Bowen National Research. So, it looks at market conditions, demographics, current and projected growth rates, characteristics of all major housing components in Western North Carolina, housing gap estimates, and area median income. The takeaways I got from this were, just as I mentioned before, there's a low supply of housing available on the market and an increasing demand for housing in Western North Carolina. A lot of people want to move here. It's a beautiful place. Friends, here's a statistic I got from that report. Henderson County at that time only has 0.6% availability rate for sale housing at the time the report was created. And this is calculated by dividing the number of available units for sale by the total number of owner-occupied units in Henderson County. And thinking about doing a survey of, how many single-family houses are in Mills River, identifying the different categories, that's a metric we could look at, just to look at data, and it's just something I think would be important. And then, of course, the net migration of people moving to Western North Carolina, of course, is for now, based off how things are going, projections just continue to rise, especially in the Henderson County region and the Buncombe County region. Legal procedures and guiding documents. These were used to make my policy flow chart, just to reference how these legislative procedures work with zoning map amendments, text amendments, definitions. There's more definitions than what I talked about tonight in my paper as an attachment. So I looked at, state statutes, our local zoning ordinance, and then, of course, comprehensive plan. Here are some of the factors considered for my policy recommendations that you're going to see next. Political feasibility, the comp plan, my, the research from my literature review I conducted, mainly from those 4 reports that I discussed in the comprehensive plan for the city of Greenville, South Carolina, and then the general consensus for my interview results from those people that I mentioned earlier on in the presentation. Political feasibility I'm going to talk about is taken into consideration because, the town council and the public through the public feedback process are more receptive to low density development, preserving the rural character of town. That was definitely taken into consideration for my recommendations. And, that is from what I feel very important to advisory boards, the community, and council in general. So also it was taken to look at how can we accomplish goals of preserving open space and providing more housing. You know, it's not a zero sum. There's a possibility where we can preserve open land and provide more housing. And I'm going to talk about my recommendations. Recommendation 1, I recommend that we permit accessory dwelling units by right in MR30, MRMU, and MRNC zoning districts, our residential zoning districts. You know, some of the things that would be good for this recommendation would be to require that ADUs stay on the same parcel of land and remain in single ownership. This could be through the staff approval process. A dimensional standard could be the standard size of an ADU could be 50 to 70% of heated living space of the principal building. That was something I found from the Western Piedmont Council of Government. Their report, they mentioned that. Also, I think this recommendation is the most politically feasible recommendation. And at the town's most recent planning board and town council meetings, ADUs were brought into discussion are now are included in the MR Rural Residential Zoning District that passed with the text amendment. Recommendation 2, create an affordable housing overlay district in the core areas of town where public utilities are present and therefore can provide more density. So where utilities are and in the core areas of town, I'm going to tell you, where I think the core areas of town are, but, think about where most of our services are, we talk more about lowering density in more rural parts of town, southern portion of town, to preserve agriculture and open space. Therefore, I think we need to increase, I argue we increase density in the core areas based off my recommendations. So this isn't perfect, but on this picture you'll see here, this is where I argue the core area of town is, or the core areas based off the zoning map. If you look, it's mostly where the zoning is not MRMU, where there are a variety of zoning districts. These core areas of town could be near Highway 280, Haywood Road, and Old Haywood Road. These are where the majority of services are provided. Employment facilities, commercial corridors, educational facilities, the town center, where we're at right now. And like I said before, where most of the zoning districts are not mixed use. So this is a potential area for a affordable housing overlay district based off utilities. If you look on this map or these two pictures, you'll see the green lines are the sewer lines, through MSD, and then you'll see pump stations in orange and green based off of their public or private pump stations. On the right, you'll see all the fire hydrants for the city of Hendersonville water. You'll see there's like there's a density, it's more dense where those utilities are. So that's basically what I'm saying is where those public utilities are is the potential to have an affordable housing overlay district. One thing to take into consideration too are watershed districts. This has a significant impact on density. It can be less of a problem with higher density housing as there's less impervious surface coverage. It depends though. So that's one thing to note there. My third and fourth and final recommendations. Recommendation 3, implement density bonuses in an affordable housing overlay district through the conditional zoning process for multifamily developments. This can add more affordable housing stock to higher income and higher cost communities, Mills River. According to HUD, also, higher density for development projects will offset money lost due to lower per unit revenue when requiring affordable housing units through the conditional zoning process. So let's say, we have a policy goal of increasing affordable housing in Mills River. And, market rate, you have market rate housing. if you, let's say the town could, through the conditional zoning process, allow more units per acre for multifamily, and in return, the developer can promise that those will remain affordable based off a town definition. For my project, it's the HUD definition for work or affordable housing, and the American Planning Association definition for workforce housing. Those can vary, and that based on the municipality, those can be defined differently. That's the third one. And then my fourth and final recommendation is to update the family development ordinance to remove triplexes from its definition. Triplex in the town of Mills River is considered multifamily, and now it must go through the conditional zoning process. In addition, permit triplexes at the staff review level and only allow triplexes in the affordable housing overlay district at a maximum density of 6 units per acre or 2 triplexes. And I apologize. I think so back to recommendation 3, I apologize. For multifamily, I would think a good number for Mills River could be 8 units per acre. In terms of, the developer promises that some of those, a percentage of the units will be affordable, and in return, we allow them to have up to 8 units per acre. I forgot to mention that. Apologize, I don't know why it's not here. So yeah, with this fourth and final recommendation, currently the town zoning ordinance defines a triplex as multifamily. It must go through the conditional zoning process, and to provide more of missing middle housing, to not make it missing, identified in the comp plan, we need to allow for more of a variety of housing options, such as ADUs and triplexes. Closing remarks and questions. I plan to continue to revise and edit my capstone project, paper, my presentation, going through the literature. One thing that there's so many articles and forms of policy recommendation out there, and based off the community, that's where it needs to be tailored. Affordable housing policy for more desired housing in Mills River needs to be tailored for Mills River. Doesn't need to be tailored for the city of Asheville. Doesn't need to be tailored for the city of Hendersonville. That's where the public feedback process comes in. As I noted before, the interviews I conducted were not only beneficial to my research, but creating positive relationships with organizations in the community and region. So for the North Carolina Housing Coalition, the policy analyst, I believe Anna, she's more than receptive to doing a presentation here. So just positive relationships created were great. Lastly, this has been a great learning opportunity for me and for someone starting their career in local government. And I thank you for your time and service to the planning board, and thank you for having me up here. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Any questions?
All right. Thank you so much. That's very well done. Lots and lots of information and lots of things for us to think about.
Sure.
So I look forward to seeing how some of this, how some of this plays out. This is good.
Before we end, there's one thing I needed to ask. We approved the October 1st minutes, but we didn't have a meeting on October 1st.
Did I miss the date when I made my motion to approve?
That was sort of like, I was like, that
I
was right.
literally
and we
read the
canceled
minutes and I
that
didn't even
meeting.
look at the date.
You said that you read them, but
I
we
did. I
I
didn't
read
double
the
check the
October
date.
I read the
1st.
meeting, the minutes.
It wasn't on my, I didn't have a colored flow chart then. It's gonna be better next time.
Yeah.
It was
Okay. I just wanted
the
to.
correct minutes. Yeah.
Yep.
No worries.
No.
It was-
Lisa just volunteered to read them for the next 3 minutes, each of the next 3 times.
Here on October 1st, and I was pretty sure that we didn't have a meeting. But
Thank you. No, we did have a meeting. Just tell her we had one.
No, I checked. I found my email from Michael that confirmed the meeting was, okay, so
Okay.
just,
Thank, but yeah,
Thank you,
thanks for
Lisa.
pointing that out. Yeah.
yeah,
My mistake.
sorry, not a,
All right. Are there any additional items?
I'm super happy with the new agenda being approved. Happy that happened in that order.
And, I'd like to say that, Kevin's presentation is just another, clear evidence of how awesome our staff is. Y'all are just amazing. We're so very blessed to have you all as our staff. Thank you for your hard work, for being here, and what you do to keep us pointed in the right direction, and yet still allow us to thoroughly discuss things. So thanks for what you do. Well, we appreciate that. That being said, you may interrupt. Oh, what? Jim, you're up. You say anything?
Make a motion to adjourn.
You are the man. Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.